U.S. and China negotiators are meeting today in London for trade talks and to discuss restoring the flow of critical minerals. Joining us now to talk about this in the economy, White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. Hey, Joe. Kevin, good to see you. Episodic. This is the latest episode with you they're going to have right now. Last thing we heard, remember China, I think Scott Bessent sort of gave us I guess it was kind of bad news that things are stalled. We weren't getting anywhere. Then we heard President Trump say President Xi's tough, but I'm going to talk to him. Then they spoke and seemed to indicate that there was some progress made with what we just mentioned, the rare earth and the minerals thing. Is that where we are right now? Was it actual progress that can be put into an agreement?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the president talked with President Xi for more than an hour. They went into many topics and also talked about the fact that in Geneva, we had agreed to lower tariffs on them, and they had agreed to release the magnets and rare earths that we need throughout the economy. And they were kind of releasing them, but it was going a lot slower than some companies believed was optimal. And when we reached out to them again, we had another talk. And President Trump, being President Trump and a New Yorker, basically said, I want to meet again in the next few days, and I want a handshake that you promise you're going to release these things. And so really the purpose of the meeting today is to make sure that they're serious, but to literally get handshakes from Scott and Howard and Jameson, our three lead trade negotiators, and get this thing behind us.
Could you expect this to bear fruit? You're not expecting...
Yes, I expect it to be a short meeting with a big, strong handshake, and we'll see. But that's what we're expecting.
And then back to the negotiating table for some of the other things? Or this was
some
the
of the
main,
other things.
Was this the main sticking point that it was?
Yeah, this was a very significant sticking point because China controls, as you know, something like 90% of the rare earths and the magnets. And if they're slow rolling, sending those to the U.S. because of some licensing deal that they set up, then it could potentially disrupt production for some U.S. companies that rely on those things. And there are enough of those, like, for example, auto companies, that President Trump took it very seriously, called President Xi and said, we gotta get this stuff coming out faster. And President Xi agreed.
Kevin, the alternative, China's perspective on that is that the import controls on semiconductors are equally problematic for Chinese companies that rely on these things. Is that going to be kind of an offset to say, okay, we'll get back on board, we'll let up on the rare earth minerals if you will go ahead and say the same thing on the semiconductors? Is that the trade-off?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So our expectation is that after the handshake, then immediately after the handshake, any export controls from the U.S. will be eased, and the rare earths will be released in volume, and then we can go back to negotiating smaller matters.
But I thought those were for security issues. We were worried about them using in military things. Is there some way to control against that and make sure that that doesn't happen?
Well, it depends. Like the very, very high-end NVIDIA stuff is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about possible export controls on other semiconductors, which are also very important to them.
But not the H2O or the H20?
No, that would be a new thing.
Yeah. Water should be free. Kevin, talk India. Will you?
Sure.
You have been on before. You've teased us. You haven't pleased us yet. Is that happening? They're staying. They wouldn't stay just because they like the I don't know, their hotel room or something, right?
Right. You know, the fact is that I think that we spent the last week and a half getting the China situation under control, including having calls with President Xi and President Trump, sending our top trade team to London to finalize that deal. And we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's teed up to go next, and India would be top of the list.
Talk about reconciliation, and I don't know, you probably don't, you talked out about Elon and the president and Scott Bessent and all that stuff. I think we're back talking about reconciliation, and I think the Senate's getting serious. And, John Thune, I think he's a great majority leader, but you might be jealous of Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson has pulled the rabbit out of his hat a few times. I think John Thune wants to show he can whip people around too, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, there's the stage where basically senators rightly try to adjust the bill in their favor for the thing they care most about. And there are, I think, 53 senators that are doing that respectfully for Majority Leader Thune. He's managing that along with Senator Crapo, who runs the Finance Committee. And we're certain that the Finance Committee is going to finish it up, the Senate's going to finish it up, and we're going to have a big, beautiful bill by the 4th of July. And so there'll be a lot of modification here and there, but the president's priorities are redlined in the bill. Everybody agrees to that. And when we get it, Joe, don't forget, then if it fails to pass, then what it means is we have the biggest tax hike in history, and our Council of Economic Advisors estimates that GDP would drop 4%. And, of course, you'd lose millions of jobs, and the deficit would go way up. And if we pass it, then we've done the estimate that we used last time when we said you get $4,000 increase in wages. It's $10,000 now. And so you got a $10,000 wage increase for the average American or a recession. That's what they're talking about in the end. And in the end, really, if they had to, Democrats would vote for it.
We had the speaker on last week, and we had Ron Johnson on earlier, who is compelling, in a perfect world, about getting back getting the spending levels back to pre-pandemic levels. Everybody, I guess, would like to do that. I don't know whether you could do it in one big, beautiful bill, but then Speaker Johnson just said, this is great. I love hearing all that stuff. Here's what I have. Here's this faction over here. Here's this faction over here. Here's the margin that I have. Here's what Majority Leader Thune has. It is what it is. It's not. There's no way it's going to be the perfect thing for everyone involved, because it's just not. Right. It's just not possible. You have to work within the parameters of who will vote for what.
No, you're right, and I've spoken at length with Senator Johnson about it. I think I'm planning to have lunch with him this week. The bottom line is that I don't think he's going to hold up this bill, but what he wants, which we are absolutely willing to give him, is a credible commitment to continue to cut spending after this bill. And so the fact is that we've got rescissions from stuff that we've found at OMB and also with DOGE that will cut spending over the next year and a half outside of the reconciliation bill by about $170 billion just over about the next calendar year. And so there's all this other stuff coming, and I think that the budget hawks have seen the work that we've done that's going to give them rescission package after rescission package. And so I think that in the end, the budget hawks are going to understand that this is a great bill. But don't forget, if we get 3% growth, then that increases revenue by $4 trillion, which is way more than the deficit increase that CBO estimates for the cost of the bill. So this bill by itself is going to reduce the deficit, but we're also coming after spending big with rescission packages that we've been identifying so that we don't have to continue to fund the dancing of chipmunks and so on.
Hey, Kevin, we get both CPI and PPI this week. Those inflation numbers will be very closely watched. The president on Friday, after the unemployment rate came out, after the jobs report came out, suggested that we should see the Fed cut rates again. What do you think? First, on the inflation front, what you expect those numbers to be, and second of all, if you think the economy should see a rate cut from the Fed?
Right. Well, right now, what we're looking at, we've been on the show for many years talking about core this or services that, but right now, by every measure of inflation, it's down by more than it's been in more than 4 years. And so inflation has ticked way down. And I think that while tariff revenue went up so much, it went up about $60 billion over the last month, that the CBO put out a score that said that tariff revenue over the next 10 years is going to be $2.8 trillion. While the tariff revenue has been going up, inflation's been coming down, which is contrary to the story that everybody else has been saying, but very consistent with what we've been saying here on the show, that if they've got inelastic supply, they'll bear the tariff. And so I think that if we get another inflation print this week that's about what we've been seeing, then I think there'll be a lot of pressure on the Fed to do that. But I respect the independence of the Fed, but they're data dependent. And I think that the data, if they're consistent with the recent trend this week, then they'll have a lot of thinking to do.
Hey, Kevin, I don't know if you've addressed this yet. You've got some Coinbase, a stake. How'd you get it? It's not bad. It's like $1 million or something. When did you get it? Is it a conflict? Do you need it? Would you divest it, or have you talked about it yet on the record?
I haven't talked about it on the record, but just a small company that some friends of mine and I started a long time ago was bought by Coinbase, and I still own the shares. In part, I didn't sell them because I didn't want any appearance that I'd be timing the sale or anything. But now I've got a report from ethics people, and we'll look into what the next step is.
And figure out what needs to be done.
And meanwhile, I have recused from any matter that's related to crypto the whole time while that was going on.
Okay. Are you mad? Did I ask you? You got to expect all that stuff. Anything goes, doesn't it? At this point in this world, God Almighty.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah.
And we hope that we'll see you again, and maybe India someday. I know you'll be on immediately when that happens, right?
When
Call
happens,
us.
Yeah. I'll give you a
Okay.
call.
Okay. See you later. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.